right. Today, special friend of Win Daily, longtime friend of Win Daily, Ani Sridhar, SiriusXM producer on the Fantasy Sports Radio channel, former sports writer at SoMuchSports.com, reporting on Maryland sports, University of Maryland sports, and a current co-host of the Friday Friends podcast. Ani, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Michael. Just getting through this quarantine like everybody else, trying to watch old sports games, new sports games. Almost started streaming the Belarusian soccer league over this weekend because I needed a
Wow.
fix. But other than that, just, binging Netflix TV shows, just trying to get through every day like a normal day.
And we appreciate you. And that was always my favorite thing to when we were on the SiriusXM show together when you were a producer. I'd always see what you were sweating that day, and it was always enjoyable to get that through your voice and to the listeners and understanding you are a producer. You're very professional, but you got to have some fun too. You're on the XM, you're on the fantasy channel, right? You got to have a little fun with it.
Yeah, I mean, you got to have fun with it. I mean, it helps in my job as a producer to actually be a part of it as well because I can always provide the insight and when I need to, and I can help the hosts with content if they don't have something immediately, if they're talking about a team, if they don't know. I'm like, "Oh, this guy, come on, like he's 3,500 this week on DK. Like, there we go. Just quick IM, they know what they're talking about. So we put out the best product as possible."
I love it, man. It was a lot of fun getting to work with you. Now we're working with Dan. We're working with Matt a little bit. I'm pretty sure it's been a minute, obviously, since I've been in the studio, unfortunately. But hopefully we get back there soon because that was a lot of fun, man. That was a lot of fun. And so the first question I have for you, Win Daily, you know what we're about. We're trying to help people win money, of course, but we're also just trying to help people live their life, have a good mindset, have a good way of going about it. So first question I have for everybody that comes on to hang out with me here for a little bit is, what do you do every day to make sure that you're getting in that win column and you're checking that box to say that you won every single day? You're winning daily.
Wow, that's actually a really good question here. First, I like to get 3 meals in a day if I can.
Okay.
This is a good
Oh, we're going with
time.
the basics. All
Oh,
right, man.
basics.
Let's get
Three.
it. Let's
I
get it.
get I get 3 meals in. I'm winning. But I'd like to say if I could learn something new every day, especially this when I'm like stuck at home, there's no excuse for me not to. I got to learn something new. Watch, even if that's watching something new. If I start a new TV show, boom, I've learned something new. I've learned new characters. I've learned a new plot. I've got something going on here to just keep up with the normalcy of life. Showering every day, like I have to. It's just so I can keep that routine and just making sure your routine is as similar as it would be if you were going to work every day. I think that helps me win every day. Like, do I know much League of Legends? No. Are a lot of people in the DFS industry now talking about League of Legends, esports? I love video games. I've been playing video games my whole life. I never got into League of Legends, but this weekend I was like, all right, why not? Let me watch this tournament. Woke up at like 3 a.m. Not really woke up, stayed up till
There you
3
go.
a.m. There we go. And I watched some League of Legends. So I thought that was a win in my book. I gave it a shot. I saw what it was all about. And now if I want to, I can like put more time into it.
I respect that. And yeah, I mean, obviously, you being again on the fantasy sports channel at Sirius, and a lot of the content is based around DFS, obviously, and with this essentially being the only thing we can rock with now, we got it. I mean, you've seen what we've done over here at Win Daily. I mean, we've built out an entire projection model, and we have one of the top 25 esports DraftKings players in the entire world now because he put that much time, energy, and effort. And I think he just had a takedown last night as of this recording. Shout out Javi. But yeah, man, it's just it's a weird world we're in, and we just got to do what we got to do to get by and make sure that we're living every day. And so now we come to the second question, and we've had this point of contention a couple times on the show. And so, are you sad that March Madness didn't happen because the Maryland Terps would have been ranked really high, or are you happy that it didn't happen because everyone's going to forget that you guys got blown out by Rutgers? Yes, that Rutgers, and the season's kind of just going to be forgot. Which side of the fence are you sitting on?
I'm actually very upset that March Madness didn't happen, to be honest with you.
Of
I
course,
put up a lot.
obviously
Yeah.
that's a joke, but
Yeah. But it's more so just because like I put so much of my own time and effort this entire college basketball season, not more on the DFS side, but on the betting side of like really hammering, like taking notes, having all these documents, these spreadsheets of like betting college basketball, what trends to look for, and looking forward to the March Madness tournament so I could really dominate this year when it comes to the bracket. And on top of that, my alma mater was one of the best teams in basketball. This was one of their best teams in a long time that I've seen on the court, and they didn't really have a lot going into next season. So I'm not looking forward to this coming basketball season for college hoops because this was it. This was the year. They had two of the best players in the nation, in Anthony Cowan and Sticks. And I'm actually upset for Rutgers. I
right?
was happy they blew us out because blowing Maryland out meant getting into the tournament for Rutgers. My younger sister goes to Rutgers, so shout out to them. They were going to be in their first NCAA tournament in a very long time, I believe, and they are going to be good for the next couple of years. I saw a lot of recruits are going to Rutgers or choosing Rutgers over Maryland. It's one of the first times that like New Jersey high school basketball players are like, wow, we have two good schools in state. We have Seton Hall and we have Rutgers. Why are we going to Maryland to play basketball? Which sucks because we used to get all the best New Jersey basketball recruits, but now they're going to Rutgers. So good for Rutgers. They're back on the map when it comes to college hoops, but super sad March Madness didn't happen.
Yeah, man. Of course, everybody's sad about it. March
Yeah,
is my, I'd say, second favorite sports month of the year. We get opening day and we get March Madness. The only thing that comes close is October, when you get baseball, football, basketball, and hockey, and we have those 3 days where you have to have 4 TVs in front of you at once so you can watch it all. But yeah, man, it's a drag. I just always like bringing that up. And shout out to your sister, Rutgers alum like myself, or at least she will be when she graduates. So it's good stuff. And hopefully we can remember that team, because yeah, I mean, as you say, it's looking up for Rutgers. I'm gonna wait a little while. We'll see what happens next season, and we'll see. Because as you said, it was the best team Maryland's had in a while. You guys have won a national championship since we've even been in the dance. So
that's true. Yeah.
it's just one of those things, I guess. But it's good stuff, man, and I appreciate you having some fun with that. So, as I said before, so you're a former sports writer, reporting on Maryland sports. Was this while you were in college, right after, right before? How did that process break down?
Yeah, so I was in school at the time, so it was easy for like a publication to like have a student actually go cover the team for them. And I did stuff for the college radio station as well. I would call play-by-play for women's soccer games and stuff like that. But I think it was really cool to be able to like actually cover the women's basketball team at Maryland, because the way the NCAA tournament works for the women's side is if you're one of the top 4 seed, like if you're one of the top 4 seeds, so 1 through 4 in the tournament, you host the first 2 rounds. So Maryland was always one of the top teams in the nation in women's basketball. So I actually got to cover the Maryland women's team in the NCAA tournament and all the things that go along with March Madness in person, which was honestly a very cool experience for me, even though it wasn't like I got to travel somewhere, but it was still something I could check off my bucket list. March Madness, covered it, saw it live, boom, check.
Yeah, man. I mean, there's nothing like it. I love the women's bracket too, man. I'm always into that. I mean, those first couple of rounds, it's kind of almost chalk at that point. You kind of know what's going to happen. But after that, I want to watch the best players at whatever sport it is. I could not care less. And if that's women's college basketball, I'm all for it. I always make sure I watch the Final Four. And I think it gets a bad rap sometimes, but no, I totally agree, man. There's nothing like that atmosphere. People are about it. Maryland's a basketball school, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm sure they have fun for the men's and the women's side. So it's pretty cool that you get that opportunity. So was it always something with sports journalism reporting? Was that kind of the direction you were always leaning? Or at least by the time you got to Maryland, you kind of knew that's the direction you were going?
Actually, when I came to Maryland as a freshman, I wanted to be a business major. And then I took accounting as a sophomore, and that didn't really work out. I was like, this might be the worst class I've ever taken in my
Yep,
entire
hands
life.
down.
And I switched majors midway through my sophomore year, and I chose journalism just because at the time, because a lot of my prerequisite classes fit that. So I would still be on path to graduate in 4 years. So I switched over, really liked it. And the journalism school at Maryland is fantastic. We have one of the better journalism schools in the nation, Merrill School of Journalism. And they have a lot of requirements that you need to graduate with a journalism degree, which included internships, published works in like publications. So I had to get a writing gig somehow. I had to do an internship, which is how I got that gig writing for Maryland Sports, covering for So Much Sports. And then I got the internship with SiriusXM in my senior year of college, which ultimately led me to loving sports radio and to where I am now. So
Yeah, man. And that's how we know each other. You were a producer
yeah.
on our show for a while. It was a lot of fun when we had you. Miss you a lot, but it is what it is. And I think it's a really interesting path that you took, because, I'm assuming you grew up watching sports and loving sports and playing sports, like, 80 to 90% of all kids in America, right? But at the same time, kind of sports journal. I mean, what kid at some point didn't want to be a professional athlete or work for ESPN? I can pull, granted, my friends are very biased and very skewed, but just about everybody at some point wanted to be one of those two things. So it's really interesting how you kind of took the back door or the side door even to try and get into this industry. And so it sounds like you fell in love with the SiriusXM side. Did you enjoy the reporting and all encompassing and like knowing that, hey, I'm, Fridays and Saturdays, I have to work because everyone else is watching sports. Like, how did you kind of deal with that aspect of sports journalism?
Yeah, that's a good question. I did like the reporting part of it to an extent, but I I wasn't very good putting words to paper as I am speaking.
Mm-hmm.
So the radio part of it was really more appealing to me because it's also more free flowing, I guess. You know, you can make a grammatical error while you speak, you can correct it immediately after, or like if you're in radio, you can edit it out. And when it comes to writing, it's just there's so many key words that you have to get very correct. And the turnaround time when it came to reporting to me was a little bit hectic, I'd say, like on a deadline, like the game ended at 10, your story's got to be there. You got to get it at 10:30 or 10:45. And that race to be first when it came to like reporting really drew me off of it. I wasn't a fan of the whole let's be first instead of being like let's be right, and also let's be like let's start a conversation
Mm-hmm.
type. I was more of a let's have a conversation instead of a let's just get the facts out there and tell people what happened.
Mm-hmm. And that's, I
Yeah.
mean, that's directly led you into sports talk radio. I mean, I'm here in the New York City area, so we have ungodly amounts of news outlets. I don't know exactly what it's like in the DMV, but with, New York, we have ESPN, a dedicated ESPN channel. We have, then the New York sports station, essentially the
Mm-hmm.
Fan. I mean, everybody knows about Mike Francesa and Christopher Russo and kind of what they did and how they really, to them, they credit themselves with sports talk radio. I don't know if that's exactly how it works, but welcome to New York City. So it's really interesting kind of how all of it has shaped. And so you get this opportunity with Sirius, and now you worked your way up. You've done an incredible job. You're now up to producer. How does the path then lead you into being that guy that's on air? How does that path lead you to doing what, I mean, you fell in love with sports talk radio. I'm sure you love engineering and all that stuff on the back end, but I'm sure you would really love to be on air, right? Or is that just me assuming?
Yeah, I mean, the end goal one day is obviously to have my own show, you know, have my voices, my opinions be heard by all millions of Americans everywhere. And I think it's all about hard work. I mean, I started as an intern on SiriusXM, and I've worked 3 years to get myself to where I am now as a producer. And it's hard work. It's just grinding every day. I've got a podcast with another producer of mine, the Friday Friends. We do it every Friday. We don't really do it to like become big shots. It's just honestly to like keep current with like our voices, you know, so we keep ourselves trained to be a host. So if one day we are, we'll be like, look, we've been doing this for like almost a year, 3 years, 5 years now, whatever it takes. And more so it's who you know. Like I'm not in this industry to like, you know, work with, just build connections, like build connections with my host, with my fellow producers. You never know who you're going to run into or who's going to hear you on like the Win Daily podcast one day and be like, hey, look, I heard you on the Win Daily podcast when we were all quarantined. You're great. Come work with us, you know? So it's honestly just making use of every opportunity I get.
Hey man, if I can get you another job, a better job that you'd love even more, I would love that opportunity, Ani. Let me promise you that. And so I guess is this a normal, quote unquote, normal path? I'm sure there's not really a normal path, but is this a uh, frequently traveled path for people to get into sports radio by kind of going from the back end to the front end? I honestly don't know.
Um, I that's a good question. I just know the host of Alarm After Hours on SiriusXM Fantasy, Justin Fensterman. He was a producer on the channel for a very long time, close to a decade. He was producing, and now he's a host. So I've seen his, you know, his path of how he
Mhm.
got there, his hard work. Honestly, one of the inspirations for me to like be able to do that one day, hopefully. And I I would assume anyone that's is a host has either been a producer or like has written in the past. I think that's another part I have to start doing again. I got to start writing. It's actually beneficial because at Maryland, I didn't take the broadcast journalism path. I actually took the multi-platform, the
Oh
writing
wow.
path.
Okay.
So I do have a writing background. So like I need to start writing again. And with writing comes, you know, podcast opportunities and then getting my voice up there.
Hmm.
So I think writing is also a way to get into the on-air
Hmm.
space.
Yeah, and to the point you were making before, like, keeping that podcast and doing it not to again become a millionaire or try and monetize it and
Right.
be Joe Rogan, right? We all wish we could. That would be great.
Mm-hmm.
But understanding that doing it consistently and having that persistent goal to continue to achieve more, as we were talking about before, trying to win daily. Every single week you're going to win by putting that podcast out. It's not going to be your best, it's not going to be your worst every time, but it's good to put it out. I mean, that's how I got the opportunity to start hanging out with you. I did 150 or whatever podcast where I interviewed athletes and people in the sports industry. I interviewed Jason. He really liked what I did. And he said, hey, man, I lost my co-host on SiriusXM. Can you come help? Absolutely. I had zero
Yep. Boom.
inkling that I would ever be on radio. And all of a sudden now I'm thrust into a, 5 to 7 role. My first ever one. Do you remember? It was the Super Bowl. That was
Yeah,
my
super.
first ever
Yes,
show I did.
we
I
talked
was,
halftime show, and I talked about all the degenerate bets I was
yep.
making from the coin toss all the way to Shakira and Jennifer Lopez. Yeah.
100%. See, you remember. And it's just like, it's
Oh yeah.
funny how that works. And I mean, that's a really weird time. And it was a weird show and I was probably terrible, but doing it more often, I'm going to get better. And hopefully, when sports comes back, I continue to get that opportunity. But exactly, you just never know. And the only reason I got that was because Jason wasn't my first interview. He was my 150th or almost 200th. So I was comfortable. I knew my voice at that point. I knew how I could do what I could do. Never live, but it was still fun. And we got that opportunity. So with what you're doing, obviously, as you said, continuing to network, continue to be out there, you're now building a repertoire, you're building a Rolodex, a rapport with all of these incredible people in the fantasy sports realm. How do you make sure that, you're not asking, you're not going out being like, hey, I'm looking for a job. Hey, I'm looking for a job. But how do you make sure that everybody understands, like, I'm doing this now, I'm going to kick ass at being a producer, but my goal is to eventually, I want to be in your seat or I want to be sitting next to you. How do you kind of go about that conversation?
I think it's finding your niche. It's about finding what makes you different than the thousands of other people out there who have a podcast. We're doing the exact same thing here. And I think for me, you've got millions of football writers, you've got millions of basketball, baseball writers. I'm a huge soccer guy. It's something a lot of people don't know about me, but I watch a ton of soccer, especially European soccer, Premier League, German League, all these leagues, Spanish League. So if I can really break down my niche of being like the soccer guy at one of these like big name companies, there's my in. And once you have an in, it's the sky's the limit, in my opinion. And then they'll be like, oh, this kid talks soccer. Let's see what he can do when it comes to football. Boom. What can he do when it comes to basketball? And then next thing you know, you're up there.
I love it, man. That's a smart way of going about it because, yeah, not too many people here talk soccer. I know we have a couple guys here at Win Daily that when the Mexican League came about, or it was still one of the few things running in that Turkish league, they were able to talk their stuff because they did their research and they did everything they needed to do. So 100%, man. I mean, however you got to do it, just do it. You got a cool voice. I mean, I hear you all the time with some of the other guys that are on. I know on Awesomeo, he brings you on all the time and you guys get to chat. I think Jason and I have done it once or twice and just kind of, let you talk. Because if that's, now that I know personally, I didn't know that. Now that I know, if you're ever a producer again, crossing my fingers, knocking on wood. I mean, no offense to those other guys, but 100% will be able to ask you more questions and get your voice out there a little bit more. Because I mean, there's so many shows. Again, any pretty much sports radio show, they always ask the producer a question or chat with them or do something with them occasionally. So you've already been on national radio. A bunch of people have heard your voice. Now we just got to get you in that chair, man.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I appreciate any host that ever brings me on. It's not like I'm running up the rundown and I'm like, throw to Ani right here. It's more like it means a lot to me that like someone who has a show on the channel was like, Ani, what do you think of this? And I'm able to like give my voice, even if it's like 20 seconds. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. I'll text my dad. I'll be like, yo, look, I was on the show this past Saturday. 20 seconds, no big deal. It might not be the biggest thing for me, but for him, it's like, hey, look, my son's on national radio for 20 seconds. Boom, it is.
Dude, it's nuts. I remember the first couple ones I did. My girlfriend got her grandma to turn on SiriusXM. Her grandma has no idea about really anything other than like Duke basketball. And we're just talking about like NBA DFS. She's like, I don't know what's going on, but that's kind of cool. Mike is on the radio. It's like,
You're
it's pretty darn cool. I love it. So let's actually talk about your job, I guess, a little bit. Like how you said you got an internship, that was kind of your in. And then as you said, you took that in and you ran with it. You just got to get your foot in the door. How did you go about getting that job? And I guess, what was it? Was it networking? Was it through the school? How did you kind of get that opportunity? The first opportunity was Sirius.
Yeah. So I applied to be a, programming intern at SiriusXM starting with my freshman year in college, just because I was like, it sounds like a cool gig. I wasn't really into the whole, like I was going to do broadcasting. So I applied for 4 years straight actually. And I finally got it. It was kind of remarkable when I got it. I got it my fall semester of my senior year. And I got the internship. And then once you're put into the internship, they like put you to a specific channel. I got placed out based on what your like likes and things were. I was like, I'm a huge football fan, basketball. I love playing fantasy. I've been doing it for years. They're like, oh, perfect. Fantasy sports channel right here in DC. I was with them for one semester. They really liked my work. They brought me back for a second semester. And then unfortunately, they didn't have an opening on the channel after I graduated to be there. So I worked in the newsroom in DC as an audio editor. So I was cutting up highlights, interviews, all that, just so I still had my foot in the
Hmm.
door. As soon as an opening came up on the Fantasy Sports Channel, I applied to become a associate producer part-time, got the job, and then I honestly just kept working, kept doing my thing, weekends, nights, whenever they needed me, I was there, and I'm now a producer. Honestly, it really worked out with like a lot of people left for like better opportunities, other opportunities where like openings just kept opening up on the channel itself to move up, and I was able to grasp them. So pretty fortunate, but I will say I will credit my hard work to where I am right now.
I was gonna say, absolutely, fortunate you put yourself there and did all
Yeah.
the work, right? I hate when people say they get lucky because I don't really believe in luck. I
Yeah.
believe in all the hard work. What is it? Every overnight success takes 15 years, if I'm not mistaken. So it's one of those
Yeah.
things where you put in an ungodly amount of work, as you said, nights and weekends. You did the smart thing, or at least I don't want to say correct thing because I'm sure there's other opportunities you had, but you said, no, I wanted to work here. I love this fantasy
Yeah.
sports channel. It is fantastic. And that's what if I have to listen to something all day, I want it to be that. So you stuck around, you did what you had to do in a very smart way. So I think that that's absolutely awesome. And so, as you said, you rose up from an intern. Congrats on the 4 years. Most people would stop applying after like the second, maybe third.
Yeah.
Kudos to you for continuing to apply, man. That's
Honestly,
awesome.
it was more desperation at that point because to graduate from the journalism school at Maryland, you had to have an accredited internship with like a company and whatnot. So I was like, that fall, I was like, if I don't get an internship this fall, I'm not walking in May. So I was like, all right, let's go for it again. SiriusXM. Let's see if they'll get me this time. And I luckily got that. So it all worked out.
Not luckily again. You put the hard work in. You did what you had to do, man. And so what exactly we all know the word producer, but what exactly does a producer do?
Yeah, so a producer has a multitude of honestly responsibilities. One would be coming up with a rundown with the host. Another producer's always said it, and I've stuck by it. Every show is 50-50. It's like whenever a host is like, this is how everything should be done. That's not true. It's a 50-50 operation when it comes to like the sound that's being played. Like it's my job to really like find good interviews that like athletes have said during the week or like a highlight or like fun segments. Like a good radio show isn't always just news, 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 news. You want something fun in between, like a TV show based segment or something like
Hmm.
that. For example, like the show Entourage. What's your DFS entourage for this week? Something like that. Five guys, very simple concept, but put a twist to it. Those are some of the responsibilities, and like keep the spice up, keep the host on track is another one. I'm always on IM with my hosts while they're in the show, just to be like, all right, let's get back on track now. Hey, this is the timing. Like, let's get out here. Let's break. A lot of other responsibilities are working the soundboard, making sure you're very like proficient with like hitting the buttons at the right time, being ready for whenever a host says something to like hit it, all that stuff, and booking guests. Another big responsibility for
Hmm.
a producer, making sure you get not high profile guests, but guests that fit what you're talking
Hmm.
about. Like we're talking Redskins on this weekend. Let's get a Redskins beat reporter. Let's see what's going on in training camp because we're not going to have the best insight. They will.
Hmm.
So that's another big responsibility, I would say.
I love it, man. I think it's so interesting. I fell in love with sports talk radio probably like 4 or 5 years ago, and just the personalities and the people. I'm not a huge Stephen A. Smith fan because I don't want someone just screaming at me incessantly for like 3 straight hours. But there's some guys that you gravitate towards and you like. Again, there's the Mike Franceses of the world, the sports pope. Everyone, if you don't know who Mike Frances is, I don't know what you're doing, but B, just go Google it. It's hilarious all the shit that guy says. But it's just funny, like being here in New York and having multiple channels and multiple places to look and get that information. It's really been able to help me understand kind of how does the landscape work and what does it look like. And it was honestly like it was kind of like one of those far off dreams, like, yeah, it would be cool to have a sports talk radio show. And then I actually get the opportunity and I'm obviously running with it. We can't do it right now, or I can't, so that's why I started this podcast too, to talk to people like you a little bit. So it's been a lot of fun and really just understanding that space. And so I guess like what with again, so as we were talking a couple minutes before you got on, you're 10 to 2 tonight or 12 to 2, I can't remember the exact time, but you're on.
Mhm.
What is it like when all these games are on and you just kind of want to be at home or hanging out with your girl or hanging out with your family, and it's like, all right, well, no, I'm actually working Saturday of the Super Bowl from 5 to 7 or 4, whatever the time. Like, how do you deal with that aspect of the job and knowing like, yeah, you're kind of probably paying attention, but you'd most likely rather be sitting on your couch eating chicken wings and drinking beer?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fantastic question. I've thought about it myself. Actually, it's funny you say that. Past 2 years, one of the biggest shows I produce has been the SiriusXM Fantasy Football Game Day show on Sundays, 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. I'm in that seat producing 6 hours of radio when everybody else is either at a bar, at home,
Hmm.
watching their fantasy football team do this, do that, watching the Redskins, drinking a beer, eating pizza, whatever it is on Sunday. I'm in there producing 6 hours of shows, and it's a different experience. Obviously, I'd be lying if I said I would like to be out and about, and I don't like to take vacation during football season. And I give myself one Sunday every year. I'll take off, and I'm like, this is my Sunday. I'm watching football at home. That's it. Other than that, I'm in there every Sunday. Other than that one weekend, and it's rewarding to say the least because you're like seeing every play. The hosts are giving the play-by-play, this score, that score, and we get to have players come on after the game from Stringers. They'll call in and be like, we get to talk to players, and maybe the only thing I'll say to like Michael Thomas is like, "Hey, Michael, thanks so much for coming on with us today." And he'll be like, "Hey, thank you, brother." At the end of the day, I still said 5 words to Michael Thomas.
Way more than me, man. Way more than
Yes,
me.
someone on the couch is yelling at Michael Thomas for like stepping outside at the one. 2 hours later, I'm talking to Michael Thomas for 5 seconds. So it's definitely rewarding. And it's a 50-50 thing. The hosts are doing it too. It's not just me. The hosts are there. They're talking about 12 to 14 games for 6 hours straight. That's in my eyes, that's remarkable. And I'm able to be a part of the process, which is nice. Hopefully, all my hard work in the past 2 years gets me to a different show on Sundays, so I can actually go watch the games at home. But it is nice to an extent to be there. And that show did win at FSGA this year for Best Radio Show of the Year. So it was nice to see that work did pay off to an extent.
Congratulations on that, man.
Thank
That's
you.
not
Yeah.
messing around. And yeah, of course, like again, everyone says they want that they want that slot. Everyone says like I would love to be there working, but then after like the second one, people are probably like, wait a second, no, I just want to
Yeah.
be at home. So I kudos you, man. Lots of credit, lots of hard work, obviously, and that's going to be the show that allows you to get the pregame show, right?
Yeah. I
Like
mean
that's kind of how it
that's what I
works.
always tell myself. It's like all the other producers on the channel now who are like above me who have the daytime Monday through Friday, the like 1 to 6 p.m. shows. They've all worked game day. They've all told me they've all worked game day. They've all done the night shows. Like I tell producers that are coming up right now who just starting part-time APs who like complain about doing late night Thursday nights, late Saturday nights, late Friday nights. I'm like, hey, listen, I did this. I did all of this. And now I don't have to because I did it. I did it. I did it well. And I never complained once. Like, obviously, I would complain outside of work, but at work,
Yeah.
never complained once. I showed up and I used to do 2 jobs. I used to do board operating for Verizon Digital Media Services in near the Dulles Airport, which was about like 45 minutes from SiriusXM. But they were basically like I was board operating for all the Watch ESPN games while I was still like a part timer at SiriusXM because living in the DMV is expensive. So you
Mhm.
need 2 part-time jobs. And I would finish at 2 a.m. at Sirius and I would start at like 4 a.m. there. And I'd sleep in my car for an hour. So it's like when these people are coming up now are like complaining, I'm like, listen, I used to sleep in my car for like an hour and work 2 jobs. And now I don't have to because I did all of that. So just trust the system, trust the process. If you grind, if you just do the Friday night this week, late night, your friends are all out. I get it. I've been there. It's awful. FOMO, as they like to call it. In a year, you might not have to be doing that. You're going to be the one that's out on a Friday night, and the next guy's going to be working. So that's what I tell them. It's just, and that's what I've been told. Listen, we've all done it. So there's no easy road.
There isn't. And
No,
again, the coveted jobs, you don't just get those, right?
exactly.
Like you
No.
don't just get the drive time show because you think you're great. There's people, as we were talking about before, that have put in years and they have their 10,000 hours in and they've done everything that they've needed to do to earn that spot, which you eventually will get. And I'm very excited for you there. And I just think it's awesome, man. Again, I think you're a really cool guy. I'm very grateful that you came on. What just a couple more questions and I'll let you
Yeah.
get out of here. So outside of sports, you were kind of talking about it a little bit earlier. You're always trying to learn. What are you doing? Let's say the world is spinning on its axis. What are you doing every single day to make sure you're keeping up with learning every day, to make sure that you're keeping up with being the best person? Because saying it is one thing. And while in quarantine, as you said, there's really no excuse you can't read 10 pages of a book, right?
Right.
But when the world is working and everything is moving and you're out and about, how do you make sure that you are sticking to that discipline and you are staying focused and you are keeping that positive mindset?
Yeah, so I like to play a lot of pickup basketball. That's like one of my things. So we've got
Hmm.
a court nearby our house. So like when the weather is nice, I'll go over there and whoever's playing pickup, I'll just be like, I got next. I'll step in, whatever. It's more so just to like clear my mind more than like actually like play. You know, I'm a competitive guy, so winning is like I'll be there. I'm like, listen, I'm playing pickup to win. I'm not playing pickup just to shoot around here. So that's important. I love watching TV, movies. I'm a big movie buff. When I was in college, my roommate and I used to throw an Oscars party. That was one of our big things.
That's
Like,
awesome.
no one threw parties for the Oscars, but we're like, oh, we're throwing parties for the Oscars. Like, we dress up in a tux, we'd
I
roll
was
out a
just
red
about to ask,
carpet.
all
Oh
fancy?
yeah, we did it all. We got like a red carpet off Amazon, champagne, hors d'oeuvres, the whole 9 yards, really. So I like to keep up with my movies, my pop culture, binge TV shows. Comes to reading, not gonna lie, haven't read a book in a little bit. It's I read more online than I do really like a book itself. I know it's bad for my eyes, but it is what it is. And
Nice.
yeah, and I know I like to play video games. You know, I'm a huge Rocket League guy, Call of Duty, of course. Nowadays more than ever, really, I'm playing more video games
Yep.
because there's really not much else to do. Even the professionals are doing it, and just betting when there are sports. I
Yep.
like to bet on pretty much everything and anything. I need the action. So that's probably the biggest one.
I like that. So this little monologue you just gave me, this little story actually makes a lot of sense. So when Jason and I were doing one of the shows, it was the Oscars, and we had no idea. And you're just like, oh well, Parasite's like, it's like plus 300 or whatever the number was. We're like, all right, sounds good. Anything else? You're like, I think NASCAR's on. We're like, all right, we'll talk about NASCAR. And then like the next segment, you're like, oh, and yeah, just in case you guys, I sent you the Oscars. So in case you guys wanted to look those over and talk about it, we're like, dude, we don't know anything about movies, but it makes sense now because you're such a huge movie. But you should have just told us, man. We would have just had you come on to talk about it. That would have been easy.
Yeah, I bet on the Oscars this year. I bet on it last year. I bet on the Grammys too. To be honest, like if there's odds for it, there's a good odd that I will be betting on it.
All right.
Whether
I
that's a
like that.
dollar or $5 or $10, I'm in on the action pretty
Hey,
much.
man, a good sweat never hurt anybody, right?
No,
I
that's what I
love that.
miss the most now. It's the
It's
sweat, really.
it's weird, man. It's weird, but it's coming back. Sports will be back, we
Yep.
promise. And on that note, I guess, what have you been doing with this again, quarantine time off? I know you told me that not as many of the show, like what exactly, how are you going about your time with not being in the studio?
It's a lot of work from home. I'm able to do a lot of like social media stuff I wouldn't be able to do really at work. Time to like make graphics for work and stuff
Hmm.
like that. Ideas. We're seeing new stuff on Twitter every day. Like, which house would you be in for quarantine?
Yeah.
This bingo, that bingo. Like, pick your top three. Like, if your birthday falls between January through February, you're this thing. So it's a lot of that I can do here. I've been doing a lot of NFL draft research. That's coming up in a week.
Hmm.
I'm a big dynasty guy when it comes to football, and I'm a big college football fan as well. So it's kind of the bread and butter again for me. I love these prospects coming out. So in my big dynasty football league, in our Facebook group, actually a couple weeks ago, I was so bored. I basically said the entire team is on the block. Send me offers right now. So I've just been wheeling and dealing, making picks, making trades to get some more picks in this rookie draft. So when this draft happens, I'm like taking notes. This is a guy I want in the first round, second round. So it's still working, honestly. Like even when there's no sports, there's always sports to do
Hmm.
research on. There's always something around the horizon. And it looks like the Bundesliga in Germany is coming back the first week of May. So once that's back, I'll be ready to go because I'll have my notes ready for whatever
Let's
it is. If it's DFS, I'm winning. I'm taking whatever the biggest contest is down.
let's go. Ani, this was awesome. Ani, where can everyone find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at Anis323 and on Instagram as well. Same handle. We do a podcast every Friday, The
Oh,
Friday Friends. You can
yeah,
catch
I
that
forgot.
also.
Tell me a little bit about that one. That's my bad.
Yeah, no, it's my fellow producer Sandro Anello and I. We started this podcast last June, I believe. So we're almost a year through. We just were like, hey, let's do a Friday Friends podcast. So we talked fantasy football a lot during the football season. We gave our insights, our bets. College basketball came around. You know, I'd give my bets of the week, the bets of the night, because especially college football, we had that Friday night hammer. Usually it was Wake Forest playing, and the easy bet was take Wake Forest and the points and run with it.
Yep.
So that was always fun. And now during the quarantine, we're still doing it. It's just Zoom edition. You know, we do it through camera. We live stream it on Twitter too. So you can see our faces while we do it. We don't hide behind a glass. We just keep, 6 feet of distance between us. And it's fun. You know, we're talking social media, like fun topics. We did a whole Tiger King thing last week, of course, because that's been
Very nice.
the big trend. But yeah, it's fun. You can catch that every Friday or anytime you want with Spotify, Anchor, wherever you find your podcast. But yeah, at Ani323.
Love it, man. Ani Sridhar, SiriusXM producer on the Fantasy Sports Radio channel. Really appreciate your time today, man.
I appreciate it a lot, Michael. Thank you so much for having me. And of course, win daily.